your body will tell you. For me, the experience has been that my body is telling me that I'm off track. And it'll be a feeling of, oh, I remember this feeling. This is, this was the level of stress that I felt before, or, this was the level of anxiety that I felt before. And I'm able to recognize that quick enough to either adjust it and say, okay, something doesn't feel right here.
The first person we lead is ourself. Welcome to Because This Matters, a podcast about leading from the inside out. I'm Mark Poiesz, and in each conversation we explore how values take shape and become action, how people with clarity navigate change, challenge, and growth with intention. My guest today is Nasim Lari, Ph.D., a senior health analytics manager at Accenture Federal Services, with more than 15 years of experience supporting federal agencies, including the FDA, CMS, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Before moving into consulting, she co-founded the American Institute of Higher Education and taught at both North Carolina State University and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. In this conversation, Nasim reflects on the experiences and values that have shaped her path in healthcare analytics and service. I am so grateful for your time today, Nasim. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
Of course, of course. So what should people know about you other than what I just said? Anything as we launch into this conversation about the values that drive you?
Just provide a little bit more context about myself. I've been in the federal healthcare space for over 15 years. I'm very excited and passionate about healthcare. I appreciate and am very much am in love with this opportunity that I've been given to work in this space, where I'm able to help make people's lives and healthcare better through my work. So that's a very exciting position to be in every day, given we spend so much of our time at work. And then in my free time, I very much like to spend time with friends and family. I love cooking. I love reading, as you may be able to see, in my background. And I've also picked up painting lately. So just a couple of things that I like to explore outside of the work that I do.
That's fantastic. When we talk about what you do, one of the things that struck me right away was that your work matters. And
Yeah.
I know a lot of people's work matters, but you seem very connected to how your work matters to you and to those who it serves.
Yes, 100%, 100%. And a lot of it is kind of rooted in experiences that I had growing up and interactions with family members and their experiences with the healthcare system. Like one example that, always comes to mind is my grandmother. She passed away. She had breast cancer. And that's one experience that's really stuck with me, to be able to have interventions, early interventions that can help prevent, events like that for other people. So it's again, it's just really meaningful work, but then also to be able to incorporate kind of the leading technology of the day into that work as well, and then build teams around developing solutions to help advance people's lives or help improve the quality. All of that is very much exciting to me.
Yeah. And you also do some volunteer work too in separate capacities, right?
Yes, I do. So I do a couple of things. One of the volunteer activities that I do, there is a local nonprofit organization that works with the homeless population. That's very exciting for me. It's a really fantastic organization. They have day programs for the unhoused, and they also have shelter. So, in addition to providing kind of the immediate need, they also provide long-term solutions, which I think is really important. They have educational programs, etc. And then I also serve on the board for my university. So being able to connect the next generation with opportunities in the marketplace and kind of bridge that gap. So that's a very exciting thing that I've recently gotten involved in. And then, of course, to support the analytics community and expand my knowledge, but also contribute where I can in that space. I'm also involved in community activities around analytics. So, yeah, trying to
You
do a
are,
couple of things, stay
yeah, I was
engaged.
going to say you are doing a couple things, to put it lightly. So in this season of your life, when you're involved in all these different things, are there a few core values that are really at the center of what drives you right now, or what could you share about that aspect of yourself?
Yes. Actually, this is a lot of these qualities or these core characteristics that I try to keep with myself. I think a lot of them I'd actually explored with you. Yeah, that's definitely something I encourage people to do. So in each stage of your life, I think there are characteristics or qualities that resonate with you and you want to build out more. So I think people should always kind of be in touch and explore those. For me, humility has always been a big one. Compassion has been really huge. And I think, obviously just being in the healthcare space, I think that's really significant, but also in shaping any kind of team that you're putting together for any kind of work. I think that's really a key. Responsibility and then integrity, which I think ties all of them together.
That is a very impressive list. The compassion and integrity. And how did you arrive at this point? I know I appreciate that you mentioned that we've had this, conversations around this before, but you genuinely live in that space. So that's not something a conversation makes happen. What was the process like to get here?
hmm I think that we all uh, are kind of brought up in with a set of characteristics around us or a set of qualities around us. And those are kind of inherited. And then as you move through life, then they become learned. I was very blessed to have been around people who place a lot of value on some of those core qualities that are important to me today. So, compassion was one that was really big within my family. I come from a family of educators, and so that was built in the environment that I was raised. And then also just like a deep sense of responsibility, which later turned into work ethic. Um, and then that was just the environment that I was brought up in. But then, as I mentioned, as you continue on your journey, as you're growing, you start to explore these more. And it's not just, oh, these are the qualities that were given to me, but what is it that I want to cultivate more in myself, or what makes me more comfortable moving around in the world? And so there were some characteristics that were more true to me and things that made me feel more comfortable with myself at the end of the day when I would go back and think, okay, what did I do today? And so I just tried to explore those more. And as I mentioned, I think the conversations that we had together, those were really meaningful in helping shape that for me.
I know some people will share values like compassion. I think that's something that most people who have any reflection time are going to realize that can be a critical aspect of life for themselves and for others. But you engage in activities that represent these. How difficult was that, or how did that arise that you became someone who actually takes action based on these things that are driving you?
That's a great question. Uh, f- for me, and I think maybe for a lot of people, because I have seen books on this topic as well, you know that you want to do something, uh, but then you don't know where to start. And so I think just taking that first step really helps. And also, um, it's just practice, I think, in those qualities. For me, I gain a lot of happiness or a lot of satisfaction when I know that something that I have been working on has a positive impact on someone else. So, for example, with the compassion, um, when someone on my team comes to me and says, you know, I've noticed something about you and I wanted to share this with you, that when we come to work, you see us as a whole individual and you take into consideration the experiences that we have. I think that that's really meaningful to me because I'm creating a space for people to work in where they're comfortable and they can bring their best selves. Um, and I think that's really important, and I know that throughout my career, there have been people who have created that kind of space for me, to do my work and bring my best self, and I think that being able to create that environment for other people is really important. So that's just a work example, but also in my personal life, when my niece says, vocalizes that she knows I'm there for her, that just means a lot to me. And so just being able to kind of translate that into the different parts of my life, um, is just really valuable for me. And at the end of the day, it just makes me selfishly feel a lot better, about what I'm doing and how I'm moving in the world.
In the scale of selfishness, I'd say this sounds like it's on the pretty good side. And I love that you get to hear that from your niece too, that she recognizes the authenticity that you're showing up with, that she's grasped, because some kids don't always grasp those things until later in life. That no, these people really are here for me. I actually
Hmm.
can show up to them, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
unfiltered as needed.
And as kids, I think it's really important because I mean, for everyone, but kids in particular, because they're just trying to, just start to sort through feelings, and they have these new experiences every day with interactions or, with like schoolwork or, extracurricular activities, etc. And there are all these new things that are happening to them, and just being there and, as like, I'm here just in case. You don't have to talk to me every day, but just them knowing that you're there. I think that's what I've been shooting for, and I'm glad that she's feeling it.
Yeah. What was you mentioned how you had such a great household and such great influences from a young age, and yet um, lots of people have those kind of influences, and it doesn't really get digested the same way you mentioned. In your course of growing up and growing into the values that you hold now, are there ones that you used to have a little more closely that you've let go to have more space for the integrity and the compassion, etc.?
Yes. Yes, definitely.
That look on your face, yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, as you grow up or as you start to evolve, I think being in touch with what is working for you and getting help to understand what is working for you, I think is really important. So I I think I used to be hyper focused on things being perfect. And sometimes, the perfection would get in the way of the progress, but aside from that, just the ease of mind. And I think that ties into the perfection ties into ambition maybe, and where you see yourself going, and just checking off boxes of like, okay, I did this, I did this, I did this, and it was a lot of accomplishment after accomplishment. And that was something that I was hyper focused on. And it's not that now I'm not focused on those things. It's still important to me. But I think the context of that has changed for me. So it's important for me to get something done or do something well because of how it's impacting other people. So I want to show up every day and do my best, uh, because I want this particular activity to get done well because it impacts, for example, these 10 people. Um, so that's one thing, but then also I have this ease of mind now. I'm more confident in my capabilities. So I think that also helps where I know that I can prioritize things and I know that I'll get them done. So, for example, I'll be okay with, you know, pausing work for a couple of hours to go, meet up with a friend who may need to talk, or, talk to my niece, do some FaceTime with my niece. And then I know that I'll be able to come back and get the task done. So being able to also prioritize things has helped. But yeah, I think that the hyper attention to checking things off of my list and ambition, I think it's just taken a different shape now.
Yeah, it sounds like with enough track record of success, there's like a trust that comes in, and you're like, you know what, it's going to be okay. I also have the bandwidth for these other things. I don't need to obsess quite so much.
Yes. Oh, I like that very much. Yeah, I think so. That may be it. That may be it. It's like you haven't failed miserably yet, so you can calm down a little bit. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've met a lot of people who never realized that, and so it sounds like a great relief that it
Hmm.
frees you up to not only excel, because you're clearly still excelling in your endeavors, but to have that, like you said, if time needs to be taken away for some emergent thing that is
Hmm.
very closely related to what you value, like being there for somebody, you can afford to do that in a time sense and an energetic sense.
Yes, I think one thing that you actually told me in one of our conversations, which has meant a lot to me, and it's not something that happens easily, and I still have to practice it, but it was, believing in my capabilities and my ability to get things done the way that I breathe or the way that I eat. It's just something that's there. I think that really helped. And, again, it takes practice to get these things ingrained in you, but that's also something I remind myself of quite often. Yeah.
I love that that landed, because I hear that I think of it as flow, that these things just kind of flow from us. We don't have to tell our body to breathe and digest, like you mentioned.
Mhm.
And there, with that trust, like all of a sudden more things open up, and you can attend to the needs in your local community that you've also mentioned, because plenty of people, I'm sure, that are doing the deep work, the type of deep work that you do, could just be tapped out at the end of the day and say, I'm done, or the end of the
Mhm.
week or the end of the month. And once you have that flow, it's able to just kind of flow out of you, and you say, hey, there's a little bit more in the tank and I can give it.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely, definitely.
what about the idea of values in conflict? Sometimes I've seen that show up with myself or with other people I talk to, that it results in feeling stuck. But whether it's maybe some of those old values or the ones that really drive you now, can you think of a time that your values were in conflict and how it showed up and what you did?
Uh, so I think earlier on, just kind of going back to some of the things that I was mentioning about, some of the qualities that I've released. So this, maybe it was a hyper focus on recognition. Um, and, it creates a conflict sometimes, like recognition versus impact. And before I may have been, super focused on the recognition, and now I'm more focused on the impact. So I may go down a path where I know that down the road, this has greater impact on, for example, the success of my client, or it may have greater impact on my relationships with different people, and I'm more focused on the impact versus, the quick wins of like, oh, good job on getting this done, or um good job on these tasks that aren't necessarily meaningful. So I search more for the things that have meaning now. Um And sometimes, I think it's a trade-off. You may not get, the prize today, but having kind of that long-term strategy that is more aligned with what you're looking for. I think that, and just having more patience, I guess, to see how it's going to feel down the road, I think that really helps. Um, but I think when we're aligning to our core values, or aligning to characteristics that are important to us, there are always going to be some trade-offs. Um, and it's just really being okay with those trade-offs. And if you realize that you're not okay with those trade-offs, then maybe you've picked the wrong value and you need to reassess. Um, And I think that comes with growth too. So, if something isn't working for you, if that's not part of your core values, if it's not something that you want to save and move forward with, then you just reassess and change it. Um, but yeah, I think that that's been the biggest one for me of, you know, is this the right thing to do? Is this what kind of impact is this going to have versus just let me make sure that I'm, getting recognition here, getting recognition there. It's just a more long-term strategy, not only for, your career, but also just for your own, well-being and sanity.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that sense, sort of discovering yourself is what came to mind as you mentioned. Like maybe something you thought was your value isn't actually your value. You just
Hmm.
kind of picked it up somewhere and like
Right.
the idea of it, but you don't actually like the way it would play out.
Yeah.
And you
And,
might need to go back to the drawing board.
exactly. Different things work for different people. So it's not that it's wrong. So your core set could be something that's entirely different from mine. It could be entirely different from this other person's, and that's perfectly fine. And it's just we have to see what we're comfortable with and what resonates with us.
Yeah. When when we talk about this, I think some people this idea of clarity, some people will think, oh, I'm not aligned with my own stuff often enough to be able to talk about it in this way. And I think it's so important for us to point out how we all kind of succumb to life's pressures and noise sometimes when we get off track. And the key is that those of us that have clarity, we get ourselves back on track before we've gone too far. How do you do that? How do you catch yourself, and what do you do to get back on?
Uh, I think that at some point I was very off track. And it was a feeling that I remember very clearly. And I do a lot of meditation, and just through the meditation, when there's just a moment of quiet and you're kind of acknowledging everything that's coming to your mind, and everything that you're sensing in your body, um, you're able to recognize when that's coming. And you may have different outlets for that feeling that's coming. It may be yoga, it may be meditation, it may be boxing, whatever it is. But I think there are signs of when your body will tell you. For me, the experience has been that my body is telling me that I'm off track. And it'll be a feeling of, oh, I remember this feeling. This was the level of stress that I felt before, or, this was the level of anxiety that I felt before. And I'm able to recognize that quick enough to either adjust it and say, okay, something doesn't feel right here. And what is it? And I think it's, really important to label what you're feeling and try to identify where it's coming from. And I think we've had conversations around this as well. Um, and then when you recognize what it is and you name it, then it becomes, well, then you know what to do with it. And so that has happened to me. So either you're able to self adjust or you'll have conversations about it. And, you'll say, I wasn't feeling, great about this thing that happened or this thing that I did. And then just kind of going through that whole process of either thinking about it and labeling it or having a conversation about it, then you're like, oh, okay, this is the thing that was off balance here for me. And I need to return to it. And I had that experience. And I think, there's a lot going on in the world as well right now. And so it's a little bit more challenging to decipher whether it's all of the external stimulants and external events, or if it's you actually diverting from your path. So it's a little bit challenging to be able to make that distinction, but um, you just pause and you revisit, was I doing everything that I typically do? Was there a decision that I made that I'm uncomfortable with? And then you'll be able to identify it better. But I think, giving yourself some grace, I think that helps. We all kind of fall off the core values wagon and then, realign. But yeah, I don't know if that
I
answered your question, actually.
Yeah, I think
Curious.
so. I love that you actually you engage in enough frequent reappraisal and reflection that you'll not only notice something going on, but you're tying, dotted lines to previous times, previous circumstances, and as life goes on, you're getting, it sounds like, sharpening that saw, so to speak, of getting yourself back on track, and that your toolkit is growing in the process too.
Yes, definitely. The toolkit is really important. And then you'll see based on occasion or like, based on the level of I don't want to call it distress, but like, the stimulus, then you kind of pick the right tool. And it takes a lot of practice. So it could be like, oh, I went into this meeting and that meeting didn't turn out great. And then, you just recenter after that meeting. What's the next step I need to take? Or, it's like an interaction with someone. You're like, oh, that interaction didn't go well. And then, you think a little bit about, okay, what happened in that interaction? What was about it that made it not great? And then, you realign. And then obviously like bigger life events, but yeah, building out that toolkit is really important. So knowing what has worked for you in the past, being able to draw on that, and then also exploring other things that can help. I think one thing that has been really great for me is, sharing experiences with people. Because when you're open to share experiences or like challenges, even in the workspace, you'll just talk to someone about, this is stressing me out. This seems to be a little bit overwhelming. And it gives other people the opportunity to also open up. So I think that's also really just having some vulnerability and sharing your experiences with other people.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, appropriately selective vulnerability is one of the greatest ways you could show compassion, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
just like
definitely.
to show and share your humanity in a moment like that. Um,
Actually, someone one time I shared something about I think I had like to do something and then I was on a call in a meeting and I shared, "Oh no, I forgot to do this." Um and then, someone later reached out to me and they said, I'm so glad you shared that because I always think that you're so on top of things and and you're so put together and I always feel so horrible like when I forget to do something or something isn't done right and so yeah she that really after that I think I was like, oh, okay, let me maybe share a little bit more about what I'm seeing, especially when you're like leading a team. I think sometimes it's okay to communicate, okay, this is what's, causing concern here, or this is my thought process here, and just giving people a little bit of insight. Or, one thing I love to do is with my team, when we come back from the weekend, I want to hear genuinely what people were up to, or, on Fridays, you're going into the weekend, what's going on? So it's good to kind of create that community as well.
that share, that must have felt so good because it was a risk at the moment that you did it, but then you got such great feedback almost instantaneously.
Right. I was actually concerned. I said it, and then I thought to myself, "Oh, no, I shouldn't have probably said that." Um,
Which is
but,
how you know you were really vulnerable because it's like an animal. Oh my gosh, my belly's exposed. Should I roll back over or should I stay here?
yeah, exactly, that hesitant look your dog gives you, like, "Should I be in this?" Yeah, yeah, I'm glad it went well.
That notion of vulnerability, for anyone listening, it's something that I've said to a lot of people that I know, but is worth saying here that vulnerability can sometimes not be seen in a good light, but that if competence is established beforehand, then vulnerability is almost always seen in a positive light. That without competence, it might be oversharing, it might be any number of things that are even red flags. I'm sure we all have seen people like that in our lives. But this idea that you're so competent that someone is relieved that you shared that. It wasn't just like okay to share, it was the best thing you could do, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's a balance. I think it helps a lot of people. I think to your comment on competence, it's okay to show that, if you're a high performer or, if you're getting good feedback from the client or from leadership or something, it's okay to also say, okay, this doesn't always come easily, it's work. You have to put in the effort to kind of establish yourself in a way that you are doing the job the way that it should be done or needs to be done or to the best of your ability. But then also that going through that process just as a human being, you're facing some challenges to get there. And just that it's a shared experience. Like everyone is coming to work or everyone is coming to a particular interaction wanting to do the best, I assume. But then also they have all of these other things that are going on and, some things that they're thinking about or like, is this right? Is this wrong? So yeah, I think particularly I think if you are doing something well, it's okay to let people see that it's not as easy as it looks. Kind of like with the Olympics. Um Sometimes, you see people doing things so perfectly and you're like, "Oh my gosh, that looks really easy." But then you kind of have to go through like, "Oh my gosh, so many injuries before this person got here," or they're ice skating through all this pain or skiing with this massive injury and, but they're still showing up and doing what needs to get done. So I think it's good to kind of lift the curtain a little bit every once in a while.
Yeah, the human side that we all have. Absolutely. Could I pivot potentially if you're open to it? Because you work close to the AI space.
Hmm.
Um, the notion of values and AI development or AI implementation, I'm naturally super interested in what might um float around your mind on that front. Is there anything that you would be willing to share in this space around that?
Yeah, 100%. And it's so interesting that you brought this up because I was talking about this over the weekend with one of the guys on my team. We were talking about this documentary called The Thinking Game, and we were talking about discussing it, and we were saying we're optimistic about AI, while we also have at the same time some reservations about it. But there are people out there who are definitely constantly thinking about, how can I use this tool to make people's lives better? Um and not only, directly, I don't know what people usually think about when they're thinking about AI, but it may be like just chat GPT and you know doing searches. But AI plays a really huge part in a lot of different areas. So, for example, with healthcare, um, being able to capture images from, for example, breast cancer screenings, and then identifying anomalies early on that you wouldn't typically see. So, it's picking up on different patterns, or building predictive models that can say, okay, well, this person seems to be at risk for example, some behavioral health incident. How can we get to that person fast enough? Um, I think that, you know, I'm very optimistic about the capabilities because of the people who are committing their lives to constantly finding solutions to make things better. Obviously, there will be places where, it goes down the wrong path. Overall, I really do think that it's a great tool at our disposal to help improve different avenues. And obviously, my area is healthcare, so that's kind of where my mind always is, but it has a lot of different applications. And another thing that we were thinking about, talking about this documentary and our work, was, just having some AI and ethics courses like you do with, ethics and medicine, which is just very much ingrained into the education, for medical students, for nurses, anyone in the healthcare field. You always talk about the ethics of medicine. And I think just kind of ingraining that into AI as well may be a route to go. Um, but I'm genuinely very optimistic about what we can do with AI. And like all of the medical devices and being able to track, what's going on with people. Like, it's just there's endless possibilities for AI in healthcare.
Yeah, that's really heartening, especially that you highlight the positive intentions of the people that are building and engineering this in so
Hmm.
many spaces.
Yes, definitely, definitely. A lot of well-intentioned people working on a range of problems using AI. So, I'm constantly just excited about everything that's coming out of it. Hopefully, all the good stuff coming out of it.
Yeah. I'm sure there are at least some people listening who might hear a phrase like ethical use of AI, and they might be like, I'm not even sure what that would entail. Could you sort of crack that door open for them a little bit so they know what you mean by that?
So, one of the concerns that we hear from clients when we go to deploy something for them is, one, this is a black box. I don't really know what it's doing. So being able to create transparency so everyone is aware of what's happening. You don't always necessarily need to be highly technical to understand the underpinnings of things. So I think being able to communicate that. The other thing is having what they call human in the loop. So any model that you're building, you have human hands on it in some way so that they're bringing their best judgment to a particular model that's being deployed. And then on a bigger scale, and again, this documentary was just one example of where it was brought up, but um, having kind of regulations around how a particular model or how a particular tool is used, or the intentions for its use. I think clarifying those, that's also really helpful, and I think would put a lot of people's minds at ease. Or like when you make data available, how is that data being used? If someone agrees to share their data, making clear that they know the exact intent of that data being used, etc. Just putting kind of some guardrails around the use of data and the build of models. I think those are, and we have some of that. It's called responsible AI, but I think just making it more ingrained into the work of data scientists, AI engineers, etc.
That's such a great overview. Thank you. I know some people, even those of us that are interested in the space, it's hard to really get an accurate picture behind the hype of so many mass media articles of what's really going on here. What are people actually working on, and what are the problems they're trying to solve as they build this? So thank you for
Yeah,
the
of
expert
course.
overview.
Of course, for sure.
As you look ahead in your own life, you've already mentioned some of the growth and evolution that you've gone through over time. Is there any further clarifying or evolution or other values that you want to hold someday in the future that currently maybe are only secondary ones, or maybe they don't show up at all, but you hope they will show up someday? Do you have any thoughts like that as you look ahead in your own life?
I mean, obviously, we're all trying to evolve and improve, and it's practice. So, the core values that I've identified are things that, I don't think that I'm there on any of them. I think I'm on the right path for them. And so I think just continuing down that path, and sticking to it, I think that would make me happy. I have a lot of people that I have as role models, both in my personal life and at work. And I'm constantly trying to, you know, figure out what it is about that person that's making them, a great leader, or what is it about this person that's making them a great friend. And so constantly trying to pick up on those particular things that I like about different people, and obviously none of us are complete beings. And bring, a combination of things, and some very annoying, some really fantastic. But just trying to pick up on those fantastic characteristics that other people have that I can also mimic. Um so yeah, but just, continuing to practice the ones that I've picked, and hopefully reaching a place where I'm, comfortable with them, and yeah.
Your appraisal of that, I just hear the humility value just kind of echoing through there, because someone who doesn't know all the things about what you do and in your day to day and month to month, um, that yeah, I love that the humility actually shows up.
Thank you. That's so kind. Appreciate
It
that.
truly does. Can I invite you to entertain a impossible scenario for a moment?
Sure.
You have a short amount of time to make a sales pitch to the entire world population about one value that you want to advocate for. You want to sell them on why they need more of this in their life and why this would be good for them. What would it be that you're advocating for? And what would you say with your short little sales pitch?
Okay. I have two. I have two because the second one was one that I just read more about. My first one would be compassion. Um because we are all tied together as human beings. And this is in our relationships, this is at work, this is, going to a restaurant, ordering something from the wait staff. Um, and I think the compassion is a really big one because we're all as individuals going through different things all the time. And so just bringing that awareness to any interaction, I think, is really important. But then also, even in the workspace, when you're trying to solve a problem, being able to identify the bigger problems that exist and you want to bring solutions for, it requires some level of understanding of other people's experiences to be able to identify those challenges. So when you have a conversation with a client, um, you know, being able to understand that person, having compassion for, their biggest concerns, what keeps them up at night, what gives them heartburn. I think that gives you a better understanding of what that person needs and how you can help address that problem. So I think that's a really big one. And then I read a bit more about integrity, which makes me think that that's the one that ties all of your values together. And this may just be my take on it, but it's kind of the quality that exists just quietly under the surface, tying all of the different ones together. So even if no one is looking, what you do kind of in your own space, in your own lane, I think is driven by your integrity. So you're not being like scored on a particular, quality. I think it's, just how you are and what you exhibit, like even in your personal life. So I think integrity is the other big one. But those are my two big ones.
Okay. Well, in this fictional scenario, you're allowed to bend the rules, so I will take it.
Thanks.
I really enjoy the way that you illustrate integrity as something that is self-accountable and self-facing. Because some people might look at integrity as some projected thing, and
Mm.
and that strikes me as less intrinsic. But your version of integrity sounds like a very congruent one.
Yeah, I just read up on that. So this is again, just just constantly practicing, constantly trying to see what works for you. I really liked this definition of integrity that I recently found. I was like, oh, okay, I like that one a lot, actually. So yeah,
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing.
of course.
Is there anything that you hope that we would get into that we didn't get into in our conversation?
I don't think so. This has been really great. Thank you for having this conversation with me. Thank you for letting me be part of this community. And thank you on a personal note for everything that you have done for me as part of our conversations. I think it's definitely helped me move more comfortably um, in the world. So appreciate everything you've done.
I appreciate the acknowledgement, but also that you've always struck me as a person with clarity. So that's why you're here, and I think that these are conversations that are worth having for us and also for whoever listens, because sometimes just hearing someone else's clarity is a spark that we need to realign with our own, That's all for this episode of Because This Matters. I believe that these are conversations that matter. If something from this conversation spoke to you, please consider sharing it with someone. Maybe take a moment to like, rate, follow, or subscribe on your podcast platform of choice or on YouTube. You can learn more about my work as a coach and speaker at markpoiesz.com. Until next time, remember that a life aligned with values is a fulfilled one.